Don't forget to like and subscribe to follow good stories.
A while later, Maxie returned to her room while Riften headed back to the training grounds. I need to return to the training yard, but I'll see you at the banquet tonight, he told her. Maxie felt a spark of anticipation at his words. Later, Rudy's arrived with a warm cup of ginger tea, concerned Maxie might catch a chill from the tower's height. Maxie felt her spirits lift. Rudy's was incredibly considerate, and her tea warmed Maxie's whole body. After a moment, Rudy's hesitated and then bowed. I am sorry for my mistake this morning, my lady. Please forgive me. Maxie smiled warmly. No, it's fine. I didn't feel uncomfortable at all. I'm happy to have your help from now on. Rudy's eyes filled with tears of joy. After all these years of serving only muscle-bound knights, I finally get to care for a lovely and kind lady. Gripping Maxie's hands, Rudy's vowed, I'll do my best to take care of you. Maxie felt a surge of happiness, realizing the people here, like Riften, were hard to read but genuinely kind-hearted. Rudy's then asked eagerly, my lady, will you attend the night's banquet tonight? Would you like to change into a special gown? Maxie blinked in surprise. Change into something else? Yes, Rudy said enthusiastically. This is your first appearance as the lady of the castle. You must make a lasting impression on the knights with your beauty. Nodding, Maxie allowed herself to be dressed for the evening. That night, she arrived at the banquet in a refined gown. Do I look all right? She asked nervously. Rodrigo, the steward, assured her, you look stunning, my lady. Blushing, Maxie glanced at her reflection, feeling as if she were a little girl playing dress-up with her mother's jewelry. Her insecurities crept in, wondering, I don't really belong in such fine clothes. Why are there so many beautiful gowns and jewels here? She couldn't help but think these might have once belonged to another woman. We're here, my lady. It seems the banquet is already underway. Maxie took a deep breath as the doors opened. Her eyes sparkled at the lively scene inside. Maxie, over here, Riften called out, his voice warm. The room fell silent as all eyes turned toward her. Maxie walked to the empty seat reserved for her, and Riften raised his voice to introduce her. For those of you who haven't met her, this is my wife, Maximilian Calypse. His gaze turned sharp as he added, and I expect you all to treat her with respect. The soldiers greeted her enthusiastically, making Maxie's face flush from the pressure of the attention. Riften glanced at her plate, noticing the lamb and touched. Why aren't you eating? Is it not to your taste? Maxie stammered. And no, it's very good. Under his watchful gaze, she reluctantly began eating, trying to tackle the pile of food, but Riften kept adding more to her plate. Even a sparrow eats more than you. At the very least, you should finish a whole chicken, he said with a smirk. Maxie stared at the mountain of meat, feeling overwhelmed. Riften continued, I know women who can eat even more than that. Maxie froze, her fork trembling slightly. I'll eat a bit more. Who was this woman Riften was talking about? Just then, a white-haired soldier called out, Lord Calypse, is it true that you cut right through a dragon's fire on Mount Leon? Maxie, in mid-bite, swallowed nervously. Cut through dragon fire? The young soldier pressed on. How did you use a sword to block flames that engulfed an entire mountain? Riften sighed. My sword is forged from a special material. It's not that extraordinary. Another soldier, finishing his beer, chimed in, not only is our commander a master swordsman, but his sword also absorbs surrounding magic. It's one of a kind. The stronger the magical attack, the more powerful his blade becomes. The blonde knight rolled his eyes. Enough with the commander stuff. He's a proper lord now. Commander or lord, it's all the same. Stop nitpicking, the red-haired soldier retorted. Another knight called out, is it true that Lord Calypse fought Sir Quaho Leon from the church in a duel? The blonde knight looked slightly annoyed. They clashed before the dragon battle. Not exactly something to brag about. What do you mean? Another soldier replied. It was a legendary fight between two of the strongest knights. Riften, cutting a piece of meat for Maxie, interjected, enough about dragons already. That duel wasn't even a proper knight's duel, and my victory over the dragon was due to the magic absorption of the sword, not my skill. The dark-haired knight laughed. You're not usually this modest, my lord. Besides, a win is a win. Everyone there agreed it was a fair fight. Led by the knight's enthusiastic storytelling, the group leaned in, eager to hear more about the battle with the Red Dragon Seer. Maxie watched in admiration, amazed by how naturally the soldiers bonded and laughed together. So this is what it's usually like, she thought, comparing it to the stifling, joyless gatherings back at the Croy estate. Her father would have despised these knights, calling them coarse and uncouth. But to her, they felt full of life. She genuinely liked being here. Suddenly, she felt a warm hand on her wrist. Looking down, she saw Riften's large hand gently fiddling with the bracelet on her wrist. Blushing, she glanced at him, only to find him resting his chin on his hand, gazing at her with a deep intensity. Maxie's heart pounded as if it were about to burst. Is something wrong? She stammered. Riften kept playing with the necklace around her neck, his fingers fidgeting with it, a deep frown crossing his face as he seemed lost in thought. Suddenly, he wrapped his arms around Maxie, pulling her close. Her eyes widened in surprise, her face turning bright red as his arms tightened around her, and his touch made her blush deeply, feeling shy. Our Riften, she stammered, but Riften stiffened, abruptly stood up, and announced loudly, "It looks like my wife has had a bit too much to drink." The soldiers, catching his drift, chuckled knowingly. "I'll take her back to rest," he continued, grabbing Maxie's hand and leading her away. She let herself be pulled along, utterly flustered. One of the knights murmured, "Isn't it the commander who seems drunk though? Seems like the Lord will be busy tonight." Another knight chuckled. "Guess we'll party until dawn." The bearded knight's remark earned him a stern glare from Riften. "If you're sober enough to run your mouth, keep drinking. And if you're still breathing in the morning, I'll make sure you're crawling on the training grounds." Riften slammed the door behind him, leaving the knight pale and speechless. "Might as well drink myself to oblivion," he muttered. "There's no surviving tomorrow." Down a quiet corridor, Maxie gasped softly as Riften leaned in and kissed her passionately. She pulled back, breathless, as he whispered, "I've been holding back all day. It was hard enough to keep my composure, and then I see you looking at those other men." His jealousy bubbled over as he captured her lips again in a fervent kiss, and the only sounds in the empty hall were their mingled breaths. His hand slid along her smooth thigh, and Maxie stammered, "Our Riften, not here." He brushed a kiss along her delicate shoulder, murmuring, "I've dreamed of holding you like this." Suddenly, with a swift motion, he lifted her off her feet and carried her down the hall. "Our Riften, slow down," she squeaked. Riften muttered under his breath, "Damn it, why are there so many stairs in this castle?" He kicked open the bedroom door, and they tumbled onto the bed together. I'd like to bathe first," Maxie stammered, her face flushed. Riften sighed, grumbling, "If you fall asleep again, I'll just wash you myself." Leaning in closer, he whispered, "I think I'll go insane if you don't let me." The soft fabric of her white dress fell to the floor as Riften's warmth spread through her, his kisses igniting every nerve. Memories of harsh words from her past suddenly surfaced, the cruel voice of her father whispering, "You're nothing. Worthless." Tears blurred her vision as she clung to Riften, who kissed her hair and murmured, "It's all right, Maxie. I'm here." The next morning, the first spring rain fell over Anatol Castle. Riften remained beside her, affectionately running his fingers through her fiery hair. Blushing, Maxie whispered, "My hair, it's always such a tangled mess." She remembered her nursemaid's complaints, always berating her hair as impossible to manage, an unruly mass of frizzy curls. But Riften only smiled, brushing a strand from her face. "I like it loose, like this. Your hair looks like sunset clouds. It's beautiful." Maxie found his preferences odd, his appreciation for what she had always considered imperfections. "Why don't you just stay in bed today and rest?" he suggested. "It's raining anyway, so there's no reason to go out." "But, you're going outside, aren't you?" she replied, her face flushing again. Riften scratched his head. "No, you're tired, and you said you were sore, so." Maxie's face turned crimson, and she pulled the covers over her head, mumbling, "Our Riften." With a soft laugh, Riften finished getting dressed in his armor, then opened the door, saying, "All right, I'll see you later." After he left, Rudy's arrived to brush out Maxie's hair. Would you like to style it as we did yesterday, my lady? Rudy's asked. Remembering Rifton's preference, Maxie replied, no, just leave it loose today. Rudy's nodded happily, and after helping Maxie dress, she asked to visit the library and requested that Rudy summon the steward. Though Rifton had advised her to stay in her room, she wanted to take advantage of the opportunity. Unlike the decorative books in the Croy estate, Anatol's library contained rare volumes, including texts on the ancient Doem Empire. The steward Rodrigo welcomed her with enthusiasm, and Maxie resolved to start from the basics. In the days that followed, while Rifton left at dawn to train the soldiers and inspect the defenses, returning late each night, Maxie familiarized herself with managing the castle by reviewing the account books. Her first official task as the Lady of Anatol was to meet with a merchant delegation. Nervous, she struggled with the urge to bite her nails but managed to restrain herself. My lady, the merchant representative has arrived, a servant announced. I thought I'd overcome this habit, she thought, but the tension had brought it back. It's an honor to meet you, Lady Calypse, a voice said, startling her. She looked up to see a merchant introducing himself as Adon Sar. She fought the urge to bring her hand to her mouth, feeling self-conscious. Thank you for coming all this way. In such rainy weather, the merchant smiled. Not at all, my lady. I'm sorry I couldn't meet with you sooner. I understand you're considering some renovations for the castle. Where would you like to start? Well, first, I'd like to replace the windows in the main hall and the great hall. Many are broken. Replacing all the windows in the castle then? Adon confirmed, nodding. Would you prefer clear glass? The merchant continued, from affordable clear glass to southern crystal, there's nothing our guild can't supply for you, my lady. If you need anything, just let us know. Would you like to see samples and choose? Maxie stammered. Why yes, that would be fine, nervously clasping her hands together. The merchant kept smiling as he listed options, asking about her preferences. After discussing her ideas, Maxie realized there were far more types of glass and curtains than she'd ever imagined. She slumped onto the table, trying to reassure herself. I'll try to act more like a real lady of the castle tomorrow. The next morning, Adon returned with an array of samples, chattering enthusiastically about the products, which only made Maxie more flustered. Fortunately, Rodrigo intervened, gently interrupting the merchant's endless monologue. I'm so lost, Maxie thought. I don't know if these choices are right. But she figured the merchant's suggestions would be suitable. Then Rodrigo respectfully approached her. My lady, the tailor summoned by the Lord has arrived, he announced. The steward cast a sharp glance at the merchant, silently warning him to tread carefully. Rifton had mentioned hiring a tailor to create beautiful clothes for her, and Maxie felt a mixture of excitement and nerves. Suddenly, the merchant smiled, bowing and saying, well then, I'll return later. It may take some time to gather all the items, as you'll need quite a large quantity. Take your time deciding on the rest, my lady. Once he left, Maxie slumped in relief. Rodrigo offered, if you're tired, I can ask the tailor to return on another day. Shaking her head, Maxie replied, and no, it's all right. Please, have them come. Two people entered, introducing themselves as Johann Cirrus and his wife, Linda. If the lady isn't certain of specific designs, we can show you the latest fashions, Johann offered. Lord Calypse has assured us that price is no issue, so we will craft only the finest dresses for you. Maxie gazed at her reflection, feeling uneasy about spending so much money on herself. She felt like an actress playing a role. If you don't like the hat, my lady, we could try something smaller, the tailor suggested. Oh, yes, please do, Maxie replied, coming back to her senses. After a long day of meeting with merchants and the tailor, Maxie was completely drained. This is the castle of the strongest knight in the empire. It should be grand and splendid to match his status. Then a thought crept in, but do I even have permission to spend so much? Her mind drifted to her time in the library, realizing how much she still needed to learn. I'm not good with finances, and there are so many different coins to keep track of. Maybe I should ask Rodrigo. But embarrassed by her lack of knowledge, she decided to keep it to herself, fearing the staff would see her as foolish. Just then, Riften appeared, drenched from the rain. "Why are you out here without a cloak?" he scolded gently. I was just heading back to my room," Maxie replied, blushing. "It's cold outside," Riften reminded her. "Remember to wear a cloak." She noticed a few blue flowers peeking out of his coat. What's that?" she asked, pointing. Riften quickly turned, mumbling, "It's nothing. Let's head inside." As they walked through the hallway, Maxie wondered, should I ask Riften for help? But she dismissed the thought. He works from dawn till late at night. I can't burden him with this. Suddenly, Riften stopped and hesitantly pulled out the flowers he'd been hiding. "I found these blooming in the fields. They looked much nicer out there though. You can throw them away if you don't like them." Maxie's eyes grew bright, and she clutched the small bouquet to her chest. "And no, I won't throw them away." Looking down at the flowers he'd braved the rain to bring her, she felt a warmth fill her heart. A single tear fell onto the delicate petals as she whispered, "They're beautiful. Thank you." Riften looked surprised, scratching his head, unsure of what to say. Well, let's go." Maxie looked at him through tear-filled eyes, smiling happily. "If this is a dream, I don't ever want to wake up." As Maxie gradually accepted her feelings for Riften, her heart warmed to the marriage she'd once resisted. Yet, would she ever overcome the shadows left by her father's cruelty? Early the next morning, Maxie cheerfully enjoyed the warm rays of sunlight breaking through after endless days of relentless rain. Finally, Riften could get some rest. She thought back to the previous night, when Riften had to patrol the grounds due to the downpour. Reflecting on it, Maxie realized it had been a long time since they'd shared a bed together, perhaps not since the feast. The memory of that intimate moment made her face flush with heat as if smoke could come out of her ears. "My lady," a voice suddenly called from behind, startling her. Maxie turned quickly, flustered, to see Rudy's. The maid respectfully said, "If it rains, then the sun must eventually shine. Everyone has been hard at work fixing some spots around the castle. Now that the rain has stopped, madam, do you feel better?" I'm very happy. The rain. It was heavy, and everyone has worked. SS so hard," Maxie stammered. Rudy's added, "Everyone is rushing to wash their clothes to dry in the sunlight, madam." As Rudy spoke, Maxie's attention drifted to a flower vase. The flowers seemed slightly wilted. Rudy's noticed her expression and suggested, "Shall I replace the water for these flowers? That will help them last longer. And later, when the flowers dry out, we could press them right away." Maxie's mood brightened a little. She spent the rest of the day in her study, busy with work that left her utterly exhausted. There were too many things to replace and repair, not to mention all the coins she couldn't even tell apart. Suddenly, a knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Maxie sprang to her feet, thinking to herself that she must look like a proper lady of the castle. She hurriedly fixed her messy hair before answering, nervously. Rudy's informed her, "The Lord has said he will dine with the knights in the dining hall tonight. Would you like to join him, madam?" Upon hearing this, Maxie's face lit up with joy. I will. I think I'll finish my work early today. It would be nice to eat with him." She thought of how she could use this chance to improve the knights' opinions of her. While heading towards the dining hall, she unexpectedly bumped into Rodrigo, the butler. He bowed respectfully and opened the dining room door for her. Even before she saw anyone, Riften's voice echoed loudly, speaking with authority. "It's already too late to leave now," Riften said firmly. Maxie hesitated, freezing in place. Riften continued addressing his men, "I've said it before. We depart in 3 days." The blonde knight protested loudly, "But my lord, you must attend the victory celebration. Do you think the king will wait forever?" A bearded knight reluctantly agreed. "The rain has stopped. We should leave as soon as possible." Riften stayed resolute. "The rain has barely let up. I've already sent a pigeon with the news. I just returned to my domain after 3 long years. Prince Reven will understand." Another knight grew heated. "Commander, I understand your caution, but we cannot so openly refuse the king's hospitality. He might see it as an insult." Riften's voice turned sharp. "Watch your words, Elio." Sensing the tension rising, the brunette knight softened his tone, trying to mediate. My lord, we all know King Reuben III is quick to anger if his summons are ignored. He won't let it slide. While I understand your reservations, especially about Princess Agnes and the king's attempts to interfere in your affairs, it's still unwise to appear too defiant. The king is naturally distrustful of his lords. The bearded knight chimed in. Not to mention, if we skip the victory celebration, the court might think we're deliberately humiliating him. His Majesty is known to hold grudges. Before anyone else could speak, Elio raised his voice. How dare you speak ill of the Baron like that? Riften snapped, his patience wearing thin. Enough. All of you, silence. We will proceed as planned. The room erupted with more protests, but Maxie felt a pang of guilt. Was it her fault? She stood there trembling, blaming herself. Finally, she muttered to Rudy's, I'm not feeling well. Rudy's grew concerned. Madam, are you all right? What about dinner? Maxie shook her head. Please, just bring dinner to my room. Rudy's calls echoed down the hallway, but Maxie did not stop. She retreated to her private chamber, crestfallen over Riften's impending 3-day departure from the domain. Later, the door behind her creaked open. Riften entered quietly, his tone gentle. I heard you weren't feeling well. You should rest. Maxie turned her face away, not wanting him to see her expression. Maxie stammered nervously. I'm fine. Why, you're the one who's tired. And you even got up so early this morning. But as she spoke, her mind wandered into gloomy thoughts. What if he just wants me to go to bed so he doesn't have to see me anymore? Maybe he's already tired of me. Since I've been here, he only comes to bed after I'm asleep. Not that I mean doing those kinds of things. Oh, what am I even thinking? Feeling flustered, Maxie grasped for something else to say. I'm glad it's not raining tea today, Riften mumbled under his breath. I'd rather it kept raining forever. Confused, Maxie glanced at him, noticing how his face flushed red as he quickly looked away. It's nothing, he said gruffly. Sitting at the table, Maxie stole a glance at him as he polished his sword. She didn't understand why he hadn't told her about the trip to the capital yet. Maybe the rain hasn't let up enough for him to leave? Or maybe he hasn't told me because he's still thinking it over. Suddenly, Riften caught her gaze and asked, What's wrong? Is something bothering you? Startled, Maxie diverted the conversation. Why, you must value that sword a lot. I thought polishing it would be the servant's job. As soon as the words left her mouth, she felt foolish for bringing up something so trivial when what she really wanted to ask was about the trip. Riften examined the gleaming blade in his hand. I've done it myself since I was 14. I don't like anyone else touching it. This is one of the 10 legendary swords of the continent. I earned it in my first duel. Maxie's eyes widened in admiration. A duel? Why, you won? Of course I did, Riften replied with a shrug. Hearing about the duel made Maxie think back to her childhood in the Croy Castle. Her father used to take Rosetta to watch the matches, leaving Maxie locked indoors. She could only imagine the excitement through the novels she read. Rosetta always complained about how gruesome and violent the duels were, but even her complaints made Maxie envious. In the stories, the winner of a duel would receive a precious sword and sometimes even a special prize, a kiss from a noble lady. Without thinking, Maxie blurted out, Did you get a kiss too? Riften froze. A kiss? Realizing what she had said, Maxie's face burned with embarrassment, and she covered her mouth in horror. What's wrong with me? Why did I say that out loud? And no, it's nothing, she stammered. I just read a story once, about a knight and a princess. When the knight won a duel, he received a kiss from the princess. I thought it sounded romantic. Her thoughts spiraled into fear as her father's words echoed in her mind. How foolish of me. Father was right, I should just keep my mouth shut. Riften scratched the back of his head awkwardly. Well, I hope I didn't disappoint you, but things like that don't happen all the time. Honestly, I don't even understand why people would do something so embarrassing. Maxie blushed slightly but argued timidly, but a kiss from a noble lady is the greatest honor for a knight. And besides, it's tradition. Knights would swear their oaths of loyalty to the lady. Riften abruptly stiffened, his eyes widening in realization. After a moment of silence, he clicked his tongue dismissively. It's not that important. But Maxie couldn't stop herself from overthinking. Does that mean he's sworn an oath to someone before? Her heart ached at the thought. There must have been a noble lady who received his vow of loyalty. Sorrow spread across her face, and she said nothing. Suddenly, Riften slammed his hand on the table with a loud bang and marched toward her. He leaned in close, his piercing eyes locked onto hers. Are you sure you're just tired? Or is there something wrong? He demanded. Maxie's face burned with embarrassment as she hiccuped nervously. I'm fine, just a little tired. Riften didn't push her further, and the two fell into an awkward silence. Suddenly, his gaze drifted toward a display model of a chandelier meant to decorate the Great Hall of Anatol. It looked small and toy-like. Maxie, worried he might think she was spending frivolously, stammered, "As should we keep the hall as it is?" "No," Riften replied firmly. "We'll need to welcome guests to Anatol soon." He gently brushed her hair aside and added softly, "I promise you the grandest, most magnificent banquet hall in the world. I know it's nowhere near the standards you were used to in Croy, but soon. You won't have to wait much longer. I have to leave for the capital, but I'll return with plenty of goods just for you." Maxie's heart sank. "Oh, okay," she said faintly. So it was certain. Her husband had to leave. Deep down, she didn't want him to go, but she said nothing. Riften clenched his teeth, muttered a curse under his breath, and buried his face in her lap. "Damn it," he groaned. "I don't want to go. I just want to lock myself here and rest forever." Maxie's chest tightened with guilt. Riften clearly needed rest, yet he had to embark on a long journey. And here she was, selfishly upset about being left behind. She reached out, stroking his back in a soothing gesture. I feel the same." At her words, Riften's frustration boiled over. "Gods, I can't take this anymore," he growled. "You don't even realize what you're doing to me, do you?" Before Maxie could respond, Riften gripped her thighs tightly, leaning closer as his voice dropped to a husky whisper. "You've just added fuel to the fire. It's too late to stop now." Maxie shivered, her face flushed a deep red. "Our Riften, wait," she stammered, but the tension between them was palpable. The next morning, the rain continued to pour over Anatol. Someone sighed in frustration, remarking, "Our commander seems to know the weather better than the devil himself." Heberin, the bearded knight, mimicked Riften's gruff tone mockingly. "We'll depart in 3 days. If you've got a problem, leave ahead of me." The room erupted in laughter. "But if it doesn't stop raining tomorrow, we'll have to delay the schedule again," someone said. Heberin waved dismissively. "Don't worry, the commander's never been wrong about the weather. Honestly, sometimes I wonder if he's even human." Elios chimed in. "He's a commander, not just a leader. When will you stop calling him by his old title from our mercenary days?" Heberin grinned. "There's a reason it's stuck, you know." "Hey, mage, don't you think the commander might be some kind of mutation?" Ruth, the mage, sighed. "Cut the nonsense, will you? You know how he is. If Riften hears you talking like this, you'll be dead meat." Elios laughed and interjected, "By the way, how long have you known the commander?" Ruth crossed his arms and thought for a moment. "Since he was 16. It's been a long time." A wave of exclamations followed. 16? You knew him when he was that young? What was he like back then? "He was the same as now," Ruth replied with a smirk. "Just more reckless and ruthless. He lived like there was no tomorrow." Heberin scratched his head. "It's strange. I haven't seen the commander much these days. Word is, he's been holed up in his chambers. Who would have thought our cold and unshakable leader would fall for the Duke of Croy's daughter like this?" Ruth's eyes narrowed in irritation. "Enough chatter. Eat quickly, I have work to do." Heberin chuckled but shook his head. "I still can't believe it." Meanwhile, in Riften's private chambers, he remained by Maxie's side, refusing to leave her for even a moment. He fussed over her like a doting caretaker, ensuring she was comfortable and even feeding her pieces of fruit. I can eat on my own," Maxie protested, her face turning pink. "Stay still," Riften replied firmly. "I know you're tired." Maxie sat silently, feeling both embarrassed and overwhelmed. She couldn't decide if it was proper to let him do everything for her like this. "The servants must think I'm a lazy mistress who doesn't leave her bed all day," she thought. Yet, she couldn't bring herself to refuse his attentiveness. Taking the grape he handed her, Maxie chewed it softly, her lips moving delicately with each bite. Riften's gaze lingered, captivated. Riften's eyes followed every movement of his wife, his face suddenly flushing in frustration. Damn it, he muttered to himself. That damned grape. I'm even jealous of it. Maxie, noticing the scratches on his body, grew anxious. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Does it hurt? Riften turned away, mumbling, even when I fought a basilisk, I didn't get so much as a scratch. Maxie grew more flustered. I'll call someone to bring medicine. Right away. A jolt of electricity seemed to run through Riften, and his composure broke. You're a dangerous creature, you know that? He growled before seizing her lips in a fiery kiss. They tumbled onto the bed, and Riften murmured, from the moment I first laid eyes on you, I knew you'd do this to me. My body is scratched all over, and it's all because of you. Maxie and Riften's love continues to grow deeper, but storms still await them ahead. Will Maxie become stronger to face those challenges alongside Riften? Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to follow the Under the Oak Tree manhwa.